Okay, so I got a call. Guy did a search on the internet. He was in Grand Blanc. He had a home inspection and there was some staining in the basement. Home inspector wanted to verify if it was or was not mold, so he gave me a call. It
So
was a
when
single.
you say staining in the basement, what kind of staining where?
So there was some, that's why I moved, you'll see where I moved the tower. I moved the tower near the staining. And the reason why I took that video was to show first of all, I was let into the house. He gave me the number to the lock, so nobody was there. So I wanted to first of all document that the test was being taken, but I also wanted to document for the home inspector where the test was taken and how it was taken. So there was some staining on a wall that was next to, I believe, the furnace. And then there was some dark black staining in the corner. So what a lot of testers will do is just take the tower and the cassette and put it in the center of the room and not do anything and just let the timer go off. The way I look at doing mold tests is that you're in movement and you're a certain height and there's wind currents going on. They may be subtle, they may be not. But if you take one test in a specific area, it's not going to give you a correct reading. So what I like to do is I like to move the test tower around. But also I wanted to verify to the home inspector that I was testing next to the infected areas. So he didn't think that I just put it in the center. So it was kind of a twofold test. Generally, I don't put the test right next to the infected area. I like to put it a foot or two away to get a more accurate reading. But those were his specific. That's what he wanted done, so that's what I did. But when I do testing, I don't leave it stationary. I like to move it around quite a bit so it gets a more accurate view of the ecosystem within the structure itself so it can get a more baseline of what's going on and what you're putting into your lungs.
So where did you say it was?
Grand Blanc.
Oh, it's in Grand Blanc. Okay,
Yep.
so was it like what kind of house was it? Was it a new house, old house, square
I
footage?
think it was made in the 90s. It was a two-level house, and this was in the basement. The basement was pretty open. It wasn't rough. There wasn't any drywall or anything like that going on. It was pretty open, but he was just looking, the customer was looking to refinance the house. So we had a home inspector come in and take a look at the house.
So so tell us what the nature of how the test works. What is it you're doing exactly? What type of equipment is it and how does it work?
So what you have an air tower and you have a cassette. You put the cassette on top of the air tower and it sucks in air. And what it's doing is it's sucking in the air and you're trying to get mold particulates. Well, you're not trying to get mold particulates. You're testing to see if there are mold particulates in the air.
So could you have staining that doesn't produce mold particulates in the air?
Yes, there's multiple reasons for staining. It could be anything from water damage that was there was remediation done and they didn't remove it. It could be hard water stains. Older houses have coal chutes that look black that could possibly be that. Just doing a visual inspection does not predicate that you would have mold. It's based on assumptions. And
Right.
that's why I like air tests. They're mathematical, they're scientific, they can't be questioned, and it lays out the blueprint of what's going on in that ecosystem.
So if there is mold, then by definition, you're going to get mold spores in the air.
Correct. So what happens is that it works in a twofold process. One, you have, especially in basements that have a little more humidity, you have mold that is reproducing because humidity is water in the air, and water particles are basically fertilizer for mold to grow. So in any case, even if you dry out the air, you're going to have mold that's already present. It may not be replicating itself because it doesn't have a food source, which would be humidity. Think of it like a cloud. And if you get water damage or if you have 40% or higher of humidity, that cloud gets thicker and thicker. If the food source goes away, then that cloud stays, but it does not grow. So either way, mold is going to be spitting out some type of replication out in
So
the air.
humidity is going to cause the mold to expand. Lack of humidity won't kill it. It'll just reduce the degree to which, because you're always going to have some level of humidity by definition, right?
Correct. Yes. Generally, if you get your basement if you get it to 40% or lower, it's going to turn the mold dormant. It will still be there, but it will not be reproducing.
But it's still going to be in the air.
Correct.
So
Yes.
that if it's in the air, that represents a house risk.
Yes. It represents a health risk depending on the numbers. Generally, a basement, you want to get any remediation down to about 300 count spores per cubic inch of breath. Everybody reacts differently. Their immune system breaks down mold differently. So you could have a count of 600 where someone would be completely reactive. And then you have three other people living in that house that have had a immunity to that mold and they're not reactive at all.
So generally speaking, everybody is exposed to mold all the time to some level.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's what turns your bread green. It's what breaks down all organic material outside. Mold is present, but in your ecosystem, you want to keep that mold spore. I call it organic mold, like penicillin, cladosporium, aspergillus. You want to keep that under 300 spores per cubic inch.
So there's going to be like mold in the environment outside. What would be a typical level of mold just in the environment in general?
So a typical baseline, they call it a baseline test.
Uh-huh.
And when you take a baseline test, generally it's anywhere between 3,000 and 6,000 spores per cubic inch. That's outside.
So that sounds really high.
It is high, yes. That's why people, when they go outside, if they are reactive to mold, they'll get stuffed up. Their eyes will get watery, sometimes headaches, things of that nature. But
So what you're saying then is inside the house, you want to have an order of magnitude lower
correct.
compared
Yes.
to outside.
Yes.
So
You
what kind of level would, okay, this is a little bit of a problem, this is a lot of a problem, this is a serious problem. What are the levels that it would equal those kind of,
Sure. So if I took a mole test and it was a 300 count, I'd say that's pretty baseline, normal for a house to sustain healthy living. Anything within the range of 6 to 800, it starts to become on the fence, and then 1,200 and above, you definitely have an issue. And these are with what I call organic molds, which are the penicillin, cladosporium, and aspergillus. If you have mycotoxic mold like Stachybotrys or Chitomium, even in low doses, it is not healthy for you because it's not really indigenous to an inside environment. People don't get immunity to them and they tend to be more reactive. Stachybotrys and Chitomium like to be in dark, moist areas like basements. Unless you have a flood in the house, generally those microtoxic molds are not in a normal living environment, or they would be like under a sink that had a leak for a while and cause that to grow.
so do you come across those ones, the more toxic ones, very often, or is it rare?
I would say that it's rare in a ecosystem. Okay, so generally in an ecosystem that is normal that you're living in, microtoxic mold is not present. I would say 25% of the time, if you take a test in a basement and it has had flooding or the humidity hasn't been addressed, then there's a pretty good chance that there's some microtoxic mold growing down there. If the humidity level is controlled, then you're probably going to have more organic molds like your penicillin, your cladosporium, your aspergillus. I would say it's not like I said, it's not common in a normal living environment unless you have some type of leak or humidity issue.
So one of the things, having moved from Utah to Michigan recently, one of the things I would observe is the way basements are in Michigan is quite different to the way basements are in Utah because it's so dry there.
Yes,
My experience is it's just you just got to have a dehumidifier in the basement here. And
absolutely.
and it seems to be to do with the fact that hot air rises, cooler air tends to be in the basement, and the cooler the air is, the more of the humidity comes out because the cooler air can't contain as much humidity as warmer air.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, you want a job?
um, So it just seems to come up a lot in this state, in Michigan, much more than it does in other states that are drier. I've never had any mold anywhere at any point in Utah, but here, at the drop of a hat, mold will turn up just about anywhere very, very quickly. It's really surprised me.
Yeah. Uh,
Anyway, so that's interesting. All right. So what was the result of the test?
There, well, it's interesting because if you were to take the result of the test and you were to compare it to most basements, it would be a baseline test for a basement that has a humidity level that's a little high. And the issue is that there is no guidelines in the state of Michigan for what is healthy mold and what is not healthy mold. So if you were to ask me, is that a normal test for a basement? I would say yes. If you ask me, is it a healthy test for a basement as far as living down there or going down there for recreational purposes, I would say no.
So what was the outcome in terms of, so you gave them the result of the test,
Yep.
and as a result of that, what?
So as a result of the spore count was 3,200 spores per cubic inch of aspergillus and penicillin. The lending company wanted the basement remediated, which it did get remediated, only because they don't have a baseline of what is healthy and what is not healthy. So they basically just went online and saw that the count should be at 500 or below, and that's the number that they used.
You said, oh, is it 3,200? So it was at 3,200
Yes,
and they wanted it under 500. So
correct.
what was the remediation that took place in this case?
There was a dry fog remediation done, and once the dry fog remediation was done, it brought the count down to 150 spores per cubic inch. And those were probably just dying mold cells that just got caught in the test. The issue is he wanted the test done as quickly as possible, so I took it about an hour after remediation was done. So there were probably some live cells that were dying that got caught in the cassette.
Right. So you did the remediation
Correct. Yes.
as well. Okay, cool. So what about the discoloring of the walls?
I applied something called RMR. Basically, when you do a dry fog remediation, it kills the mold on the surfaces and in the air, but it does not take away the staining, even though it's dead. It's kind of like leaving dead bodies behind.
Uh-huh.
So they wanted that eradicated also. So you just apply a stain remover that is chemically it's based on how to dissolve mold. So it dissolves it and it gets rid of it.
So what do they do? Just paint straight over it, or?
No, you just spray it on and the mold disappears. The paint doesn't is not affected. The only thing
Oh,
that would be
okay.
affected is clothing because it does have a little bit of a industrial strength bleach to it.
Right. So basically that treatment and the wall was good after that.
Correct.
Oh,
Yes.
blimey, that's pretty cool. So what type of material was the wall? Was it concrete or drywall or what?
It was concrete.
Concrete in this
Yep.
case.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So pretty quickly then problem solved.
Correct. The only just speaking on this, the only issue that I brought up that a lot of people frown upon is people taking tests and then doing remediation, and they're saying that you can rig the test or whatever. So I don't know if I want that brought up, but when a customer does bring it up, I always have an envelope with me, and they can walk with me and do the tests, and they can take the FedEx envelope and put it in a FedEx deposit box. So that's
So
kind of
the
how I
actual result of the test you get immediately when you test it, or you send it off in order to get the test.
The tests go to IMS Lab, which is in Walled Lake, Michigan. Generally, you get the results in 2 business days.
So the bottom line then is you do the process of the doing the test, but to actually get the result of the test, there's an independent body that is providing that result. So it should get rid of any fears that you're creating a problem that isn't there, because the actual result of the test is done independently. Am I understanding
Correct.
correctly?
Yes. Yep.
Got it.
Absolutely.
Test. Confirm. Protect. Schedule your mold inspection today.